Well, tell you, there's not much lawnmower coming in this week. The only thing I got this week is this green one, and I've already changed out the priming bulb, the carburetor assembly area, and needed an air filter, so I thought I'd put an air filter on it. And then I thought, you know, he also wanted me to sharpen the blade, and so I thought, you know what, I just well change the oil, so I'll wait for the air filter and that one to be finished. Still waiting on the guy to come by and pick this one up. He wanted to pick it up Saturday or Sunday. Of course, you know, Saturday or Sunday is, I like to, you know, it's Saturday night, I should say. He probably called or messaged me at 6 o'clock. And so I told him he'd come by Saturday, but not at 6. So he's procrastinating, I'm sure. Doesn't want to pay. So, yeah, a few days ago, I don't know, maybe a week or, no, maybe 2 weeks ago now, I had a guy come over. He says, engine won't start on my lawnmower. Can you take a look at it? So he brings it over 2 days late, because he said to bring it over one day and it ended up being several days later. He says, I changed the ignition coils on it and it still won't start. So I tried to start it, and immediately I heard a tick, 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 tick. I mean, it was really loud. So I took the cover off to see what this noise is when I was turning it over, and the magnet on the flywheel, I'll show you what a magnet on the flywheel looks like, was hitting the ignition coil that you put on. You're supposed to have a 10,000ths gap. It's called an air gap. And it was just slapping it. Had I gotten this thing running, we'd have had to replace the ignition coil again, simply because it was all damaged from the magnet. So here's the flywheel. And so every time this magnet was coming across it, it was hitting that ignition coil, which sits right here. That ignition coil and this magnet is what creates the electricity that creates a spark in the spark plug. So I spent about an hour getting all that disassembled and reassembled and adjusted for a free diagnostic, because I always do free diagnostics. So I go into looking at it, and it's quite clear it has no compression. So I just spent an hour to find out that this is a serious problem. So I take my endoscope and I look inside, and the piston's not moving on either cylinder. So it's catastrophic failure, whatever it is. I call the guy and tell him about it, and he says, oh, I'll come up and take a look. So he comes up and he wants to look at the endoscope because he doesn't believe that I've just discovered what the problem is, I guess. So, I mean, I've taken the valve covers off and I looked at the valves and make sure they were working. And that's how I noticed it, I think. Is that how I noticed it? I don't remember. The valves were still moving, is my point. He says, okay, I'll come and get it. He says, I got this guy that rebuilds engines. I'm just going to take it over to him. And I thought, well, what a bunch of crud that is. He says, how much I owe you? I said, well, you don't owe me anything. I do free diagnostic. Okay. So he comes over with this huge John Deere tractor. Huge. And his grandson's following him up in a flatbed pickup truck. And so this John Deere has hay bale, or round bale forks that you stab into it, and you can lift these bales and move them around. So they're trying to chain this lawnmower up to the fork on the John Deere, and I'm thinking, man, I could have had this thing loaded without the John Deere in about I don't know, 15 or 20 minutes. That would have been all it would be taken for me. And I bet they were out there an hour trying to get this lawnmower loaded on the flatbed with this huge tractor that was clear he didn't know how to drive. I thought he was going to flip it over in my ditch. So they leave. Not goodbye, not anything. Well, I'm kind of frustrated with this. I'm thinking, I just spent 2 or 3 hours trying to diagnose your lawnmower, which I know that there are subscribers out there who believe I should charge for a diagnosis fee. There are people on YouTube who explain that it's better that you don't, especially for these, push mowers and weed eaters and stuff, that you'll be more likely to get return business if you don't charge for the diagnosis. So I don't charge, and sometimes I'll spend an hour or two on a job and it pays off. They'll say, yeah, do it, fix it, get it going. And sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you just lose. Well, that particular week, it was a big loss. I did a lot of diagnosis for nothing. And of course, you're frustrated and aggravated already because you're not getting paid anything. You did all this work, but that's okay. I mean, this is a hobby business after all. So I'm a little frustrated. What frustrated me the most was he said he was going to take it to someone else to rebuild it. So he got free labor out of me trying to figure out what's wrong with his lawnmower. So whoever his friend is, or whatever that is, whatever the relationship is going to rebuild it. It was clear he did not like my operation, which was fine. But you would have thought, and I'm not saying they should have, but you would have thought, he just said, let me pay you for your time because I am going to take this someplace else. I'm not going to give you the business. Okay, well, that would have been fine, but he didn't. Okay. So I forgot all about him. I really thought that he didn't like me or my operation. I would never hear from him again, and I didn't have to worry about him. And I was kind of grateful that it all went by the wayside anyways, because, well, first of all, I didn't even really agree that he should be replacing the engine or rebuilding the engine. The mower is 25 years old. The beast is 25 years old. And there are things falling apart on it. And as long as it's falling apart and this cheap little repairs, $20 here or $15, I know that can penny you to death, but as long as it's just cheap repairs, I'm going to keep playing with it and having fun with it. But if it goes catastrophic, there's no way I'm going to keep it. I'll take the back tires off and I'll find something else on Facebook Marketplace for $100, like I did that one. They're selling them all the time, and I even recommended it. I said, well, it might be cheaper if you just go on Facebook Marketplace, pick up a zero turn for $500 to $800, something like that. Might be better. So, well, I missed a part. Before he came up, he says, what's the size of that shaft on that mower? I forgot about this part. And I said, well, let me go look at the serial number and I'll go tell you. Well, the serial number had fallen off. It's just a sticker on the Kohler. It's just a sticker. And I said, well, I really don't know. I said, we can look it up and see what we can come up with. And so I typed in the model number of the motor, and I found the shaft size. I'm talking to him on the phone. I'm giving him all this information for free. This is even before he told me he was going to take it someplace else. So, I mean, he's very grateful and everything. So, like I said, he comes up, picks it up with this John Deere, and that was a fiasco. But he got to thump his chest, show me that he had a John Deere, I guess. So, like I said, I think I just completely forgot about him. I figured he'd never call me again, and I was pretty happy with that. It wasn't that he was mean or ornery, but he just said things that just kind of like, really? Like, I'll just take it to my buddy over there, and he can rebuild it. So, he calls me today. He says, have you ever taken an engine off a frame of a lawnmower? Well, yeah, it's kind of a common practice. It's something you got to do. I said, yeah, when you got to replace a camshaft or rebuild an engine, yeah, you got to take the engine off. Well, yeah, I guess that's true. You do all that, huh? Yeah, so he says, I'm up under here and I got 2 of the bolts off on this engine and I can't find the other 2. I don't know where they're at. They're underneath the frame somewhere. Is that something I can hire you to do, to come up here and do that? I'm like, no. So I said, I don't think I'm going to work on your lawnmower. It's been worked on quite a bit by somebody else, and it just runs in. I've ran into some problems. He says, no, the only thing I did was replace the ignition coils. And I said, yes, sir. As I explained, one of them was misadjusted and it was slamming up against the magnet, or the magnet was slamming up against it. When it was turning over, I spent an hour fixing that. Well, I guess I could pay you for that. I said, that's all right. It was a diagnosis. My diagnoses are free. And he says, so I said, I don't think I'm going to do that. And he says, no, it's just a couple bolts. You can do it. I said, I think I'm going to decline. I couldn't understand the gall of this guy calling me up after he said he was going to have somebody else do it. And I know why he called me. Well, even Carolyn pointed this out. Because Why would somebody, his buddy or whoever was going to rebuild the engine, which is a couple hundred miles away, by the way, want to take a mower in just so you can remove a couple bolts? So he knew his buddy was going to say no. So what this guy is doing is he's trying to save money by doing it all himself, or having some loser in town, I guess, do it for free. He isn't going to pay. He would have found something that I did wrong. Oh, that's not the way you should have done it. So I think I'm going to skip on paying you. That kind of stuff. He had no interest in spending any money on that mower. He just wants it fixed. So I've been watching these videos here lately. They show up on my feed, of course, and I'll watch them, about firing your customer or something. Customers aren't always right. You hear that all the time. Customers are always right. They're not always right. Watch one YouTube video. A guy was describing how the guy brought a car into his shop and says, I need this. I can't remember what it was, but he needed something fixed. Oh, air conditioner. That's what it was. Air conditioner. I need my air conditioner fixed. We're going on a trip tomorrow. And the guy says, well, I can't fix it that fast. I mean, I got people in front of me. Well, just push them behind. Get me in there now and you can push. He said, no, sir, I can't do that. They have appointments. They called. They scheduled an appointment. I'm working on their car. Just it wouldn't be fair to them. Well, I tell you, I got to get this thing done today. He says, I can charge it up with some Freon, or whatever it is, R12, or whatever they use nowadays. Back in my day, it was R12. So he says, I can charge it up. He says, well, how much is that going to cost? Well, it's going to cost $200. And that'll fix it. He says, no, I'm not saying it'll fix it. I can try to charge it to see if it'll work. That's all I can do. I got to diagnose it. It's going to take some time. Well, I just can't do that. Well, then you're going to go on vacation without an air conditioner. So he said, well, how long has it not been working? Oh, a couple months. So you've let this go for a couple months, and then you come into the shop and he says, from now on, you're going to have to take your, apparently they've had some problems with this guy before. From now on, you're going to have to take your cars to a different location. We're not going to work on any of your vehicles anymore. Because these customers, I just fired one the other day. He wanted his lawnmower repaired, so I repaired his lawnmower, and he was easy to get a hold of, easy to talk to with the lawnmower. So I go over there, I drop off his lawnmower. He says, I got this pressure washer here that I need you to work on. Great. Take your time, no big hurry. Okay. Well, I mean, I tried to do everything within 10 days. So, like, within 4 days, I had this pressure washer running. I called him up and said, hey, no, I guess I texted him. Well, it doesn't matter. I contacted him. Said, your pressure washer's done. Okay. That was at 2 o'clock. He says, I'll call you later this afternoon, and you can drop it off. So he calls at 6 o'clock, and I said, well, my shop's closed up. Can I bring it tomorrow? Yeah, you can bring it tomorrow. Well, he never calls tomorrow. I leave him text messages. He doesn't say a word, nothing. Well, 4 o'clock rolls around. Yeah, you can bring it over now. I said, well, the shop's closed up, we got to do it during the day, working hours. And so he does it again the next day. I'll be there at 5. You can drop it off at 5. The shop is closed. He doesn't seem to understand that I close up my shop. So I just returned the pressure washer and he wasn't home. I just left it on his porch. So he messages, says, I'll be home at 5. No, I'll be home all day. That's what he said. I'll be home all day. And I replied back, I've already returned it. Well, about 5 o'clock, he calls and says, you need to come over here and get this other piece that I got that you need to work on. I said, no, sir, I'm not going to work on any more of your equipment. Your schedule and my schedule are different. And so, with different schedules, we're just not going to be able to work together. So, yeah, he was procrastinating, my guess is, because he didn't have the cash. I tried to, I want cash. I had another one that had a fire last year. I mean, he came over and straight up intimidated me. He told me, my father's starting to get anxiety, buddy, and you're going to have to get this fixed today. Well, it was just a service, and I had to order inner tubes. Sometimes inner tubes don't come in very fast. I got an inner tube now, and I'm like, I think I ordered it last week, and it's still got a week to go. Inner tubes just take forever to arrive, especially those special sized ones. If it's a common one, like a riding mower, John Deere or something, yeah, they're pretty common and they ship pretty easy. But these odd sized ones take forever. So I was waiting on the inner tube. You're gonna have to get this done today. I said, I'll get it done. He says, I'll be here Thursday to be picking it up. You understand me? Well, that was the last time I was going to do business. Well, he called, and I said, well, no, my database says that it was intimidated. There was some intimidation on the last job I did. I pretended like I didn't remember it. I said, so I won't be able to work on your equipment. I didn't intimidate you. Well, I didn't say it was you, or I didn't say who it was. I said there was some intimidation. So he knew he was trying to bully me. So, no, I guess we're just going to have to start firing. You know, it's just part of the job. I don't know how many mechanics do it, but it sounds like a lot. Fire their customers. So, if you'll click this up next box, it'll take you to a video where I was working on something on my other channel. So, I'd really appreciate it if you go check it out. So, if I can inspire you to fire your customers, so you can live your dreams. Thanks for watching.